everyone notice another human being in this room? Did it feel good to notice them?
Yes.
Was it better than looking at a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. I believe to the core of my soul that these two things are vital to us. And that we're not going to thrive without those two things. The Schumacher's kind of right. Question is the world that we are headed towards a world where we and others are going to have the chance to do those two things? That's what I want to play with a little bit. And what I want to show you is this quote from William Gibson, who's the sort of self-appointed noir punk, the noir cyber prophet of punk predictions of the future. And he says that the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And I want to show you one picture where the three different futures have already crash landed on exactly the same spot. And I think we're at this extraordinary moment where we can actually help to define which of them is going to come into being. Can I get, I've probably been given a click which I've lost. Can I get this slide up?
Yeah, just press.
Yes. Okay. This is a place that's been in the news the last few months. This is a half an hour's drive from the Westgate Centre in Nairobi. I was there in December. Wow. There's three cities here. Three cities, I believe, or the DNA of them. You can probably hardly see it. But when you look at this picture, is there anything... Actually, let me throw it over to you. If you're like gazing through the future, what stands out as being significant in this picture? What do you notice? What's the most important stuff in this picture? Throw it out, anyone. The people, yeah. Who is this weird ragtag bunch at the back? Some of them, their fingers laced through, some looking at the camera, some looking that way. Who are these people? What else? Yes. And by the way, it's so nice to be in a group that's not all middle-aged white men. It's so fantastic. I love that. Please, all of you, become partners as soon as you can so that we can up the diversity quotient. It's really fantastic. It's just fantastic. God, please, honestly, don't hold back. Okay, what else? Really? What else? Say? Yes, there is a bit of a fence. What else? Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not being facetious. What is this fence doing? And why is the grass greener on one side the other than the fence? Not just metaphorically. Yeah. Yeah. There is a bit of a sign. Now, what's on the sign? What's on the sign? Can you see it? Yeah, it says something like, yeah, Vision 2030. And it's actually a sign for something called Konza Technopolis. Has anyone here been to Nairobi? Fantastic. Anyone here lived in Kenya?
I like
Okay, great. So this is one of a quartet of 4 post-smart cities being built up outside the perimeter around Nairobi. This one's called Konza, 14.5 billion World Bank support, and this is sort of uber-smart techno-city. Okay, what I would suggest to you is we've pretty well identified it. What no one has pointed out is anything about the landscape. What do you notice about it? Undeveloped? No one. There is a bit of a contrast with the sign. What's going on here is you've got a broken savanna outside Nairobi. You've got a broken countryside. And this is part of a global pattern, where with climate change, with land acquisition for mass agriculture, what you've got is basically farmers' incomes failing. And as a result of this, you've got a pattern of distressed migration, where 200,000 people a day are fleeing the countryside, the broken countryside, leaving behind the fields that are failing. And where are they headed? Where are they going? To the big cities. So that's 200,000 a day, that's 3 Manchesters a week. And what you've then got is this sort of domino effect. Because how does Nairobi, anyone who's been there recently, how's Nairobi last time you were there?
It was in 2009. It's a bit chaotic.
A bit chaotic. Anyone been there more recently? Yeah, how was it?
Yeah, quite chaotic and really congested.
What you've got is a pattern, and it's Kinshasa, it's Lagos, it's Sao Paulo. It's the megacity starting slowly to get swamped by just the tide of distress migration that's coming in. It just can't handle it. The streets can't handle it. The potholes, the government resources for police, for education, for health can't handle it. And all of this is, of course, exacerbated by Westgate, because what then happens is that business responds. And what's business response? What's the response of firms all over the world when they've got anxious employees, the husbands, the wives calling up saying, I don't want my kids to be living here? How do the businesses respond? They exit. They get out. So you've got right now this domino effect where as the fields fail, the tide goes to the megacity. The megacity then fails. And then, as this Titanic of the megacity starts to go down, what you see popping up, and as I said, already full, just around Nairobi, you've got the quote smart city, which is like a sort of speedboat, a gilded GPS-equipped speedboat launched off the Titanic. And is it for the many or is it for the few? I went and toured one of them in December, one called Miga, actually, and it looked fantastic. It looked fantastic. It had an 18-hole golf course. It was actually called Executive Golf, which I thought sounded even better. This golf course was built on a 750-acre former coffee plantation. So the people there lost their jobs, but it's okay, because what they're going to have at the 18th hole is a museum of coffee, yes, where you'll be able to sit, sipping your Lavazza coffee. In other words, what you've got is a site that was a site of production, that was a site of local jobs, becoming a site of consumption for a few. And it's all, of course, built on these Cisco, IBM-enabled super smart systems. But you then got a question about how resilient is this? How resilient is this? And if you look at, again, just the megatrend of climate change and its impact on cities, well, one of the things you're seeing is it's in Somalia, in the areas that are hardest hit by drought, that Al-Shabaab rose to prominence. And if the climate change predictions are right, there's going to be an awful lot of very hungry people. And where will they be going if big business and the jobs abandon the megacity and sets up in these new smart cities? Well, they're not dumb. They're going to go to where they think the new jobs are. And they're going to go to this fence. They're going to go to this fence. And guess what? This time worse than Nairobi. Actually, there aren't going to be jobs. Because it's going to be Lavazza, and it's going to be Lavazza delivered by a supremely complicated machine that no one can possibly figure out how to fix. What you've got here is the city that actually looks eco and is dressed up as eco. But ultimately, it's a non-resilient city that risks escalating the unit of obsolescence, the unit of disposal, right up to the city level. It's only as good as the last available IT guy who doesn't flee the moment that fence starts getting picketed. Is it socially inclusive? Not so much. It's for the few who've already got it, insulating them from the problems of the many. And is it productive? It's not a city of production, it's a city of consumption. So under this model, and by the way, there's 100 of these going to be built in China in the next 3 years alone. This is the conventional Big Four model of a smart city, and a quote, city of the future. This on the slide. The problem with this, and by the way, this is kind of a defining challenge of the 21st century. We're going to be going from a species that was 2% urban in 1800 to 70% urban by 2050. So like we're, as a species, just saying, whoa, let's change habitat. And let's do it in exactly the places where we're least equipped to do it. This, as a defining megatrend for the 21st century, leaves us with an ecosystem that's got triple fracture in it. We've got a broken countryside, we've got a broken megacity, and then we've got a broken smart city that becomes not the next subprime, but the next superprime, sink, the state capital. At this point, you should be feeling really good. So what do we do with that? And where in that do we have the rights to optimism? Do we have the rights to think? Because of course, these problems don't end there. These problems then globalize, and they do result in fractured societies and brittle societies with decreasing willingness to accept migrants and increasing xenophobia. So is there another city of the future that's also bubbling up? So there's two that I've sort of tried to show fragments of here. The first, which is sort of visible only through the broken countryside, which is really its cause, is the broken megacity, the metropolis, which is the city of mass production that Henry Ford built if we just remain wedded in our current business model. That metropolis, you could call it, and it's Detroit, for those on the US side who we welcome. It's New York after Sandy, it's New Orleans after Katrina, it's Bangladesh, it's parts of California. It's mass production, which kicked ass, which transformed people's lives, which massively enhanced productivity, starting to become a form of doing business that's got more disbenefits than benefits. So that's the first city. If we remain locked in the fossil fuel-driven mass production monoculture of the city of Henry Ford, that's Metropolis. The second city is if we escape in our little speedboat towards this city that you could call Siberia, where we insulate ourselves from the challenges that the world presents us rather than trying to address them. And what is the use of technology in that context? Technology is just used to sustain mass production, to give it another lease of life, to keep it going for a little bit longer. But it's still the underlying principle. It's like Botox in the face of Joan Collins. It's still keeping it going. It's just all Pierce Brosnan. I don't want to be discriminatory here. So these are two cities, Metropolis and Siberia. Is there a third? Who was it who raised the people? Someone raised the people. Great. So who are these folk? Well, I'll tell you. They are from one of Nairobi's 16 innovation hubs. This is a quote from the poet Ben Okri: "The fields are sprouting strange new mushrooms." And these things are just springing up. Anyone here live in Hoxton? Okay, that's a relief, because they would have made me feel very uncool. But we have one who lives in Hoxton. Who? Okay, excellent. Look at his shirt for an indication of just how cool. What you've got: Shoreditch, Silicon Roundabout, in Accra, in Nairobi, in Detroit, bubbling up now. You've got in the mulch of mass, in the mulch of a model that just saw business getting offshore to the cheapest possible labor source in China, as it then was, leading these broken, derelict economies. In that mulch, suddenly what you're starting to see springing up are these self-organizing communities who are doing some really interesting stuff with a deployment of tech that's very different. So let me just give a little example of these guys. There's a group who we work with in the sustainability team called FftF. That's one of these groups here. And what they do is they just address a real problem, which is power. So globally, 1.4 billion people without power. Powerless because they've got no power. Income instead on kerosene, firewood, health impacts, costs of time getting firewood, you name it. So what are they doing? They're taking the mobile solar light, the D-Light, which is great, but it costs a lot, a couple $100 for a good one. And they're putting a SIM card into it. And the moment you put a SIM card into it is the moment, of course, you can lease the thing, just like a mobile phone. People can pay per month, they can pay per day. It costs them 40 or 50 cents a day now, the people who are using FftF, to get power. And with that, exam pass rates go up, 68 to 83%. They can do mobile micropayments for insurance, including crop insurance, to allow them to invest into their crops. They can make mobile payments for stuff like the Kickstart hand pump, which gets them access to the underground water table, which is there for 96% of unirrigated African, sub-Saharan African land, which can triple the amount of crops they can plant. The total in one study took incomes up from $160 a head to $1,600. The market for them, just in Kenya alone, is $1 billion US that the poorest of the poor spend on kerosene and firewood. Globally, 38 billion. What is the point of this tiny little niche example that is kind of the opposite of the subprime that got us into this mess? as a fragment of the DNA of capitalism. It's about a market that's big already. It's about a market that's growing. This is where all the population growth is going to be. And above all, it's a market where, when you serve it, what you're doing is, rather than reducing incomes and plunging people into debt with exploding mortgage rates at the end of the term, you're actually increasing their incomes, 160 to 1600. You're increasing their capacity to get more productive as they borrow more to do exactly what they're planning to do, which is use this model for other agricultural equipment, leasing, technology for farming, tractors, you name it. So what you've got here, I just want to try this out, is, I think, some extraordinary shifts which are starting to happen with the nature of capitalism, its DNA. We've had a capitalism that was based on Henry Ford, and it was based on top-down, fossil fuel-driven mass production. And not just that, focused on those who could afford it, on a market that was intensive, only basically the urban and suburban billion. And that's what PwC's business, of course, has been built on serving as well. But what we're suddenly starting to see is that these new technologies, if they're deployed not for the speedboat, to gild the speedboat for the few, vertically, but actually horizontally, to address the challenges of the many, they suddenly transform the nature of what the markets are that we're serving. From mass, it becomes mass plus micro. From the fossil fuel, it becomes fossil fuel plus renewable. From top down, it's top down plus distributed, centralized. And from intensive and exclusive markets, actually, it becomes much more inclusive and extensive, where suddenly the market that's available extends beyond that urban and suburban billion to the entirety of the bottom of the pyramid, where you're actually increasing their capacity to grow. So is this within the DNA of capitalism? Well, if capitalism doesn't get totally locked up by subsidies, by corporate lobbying, by political interests, then yes, if the DNA of capitalism is growth, if the DNA of capitalism is this Klaus Schwab of wealth, is to fit the world around it, then this is an evolution of capitalism towards a distributed form of capitalism that certainly fits. So what's any of this got to do with us? Well, the short answer is to get from where we are to there, to tear down this fence, is a hell of a job. It's a hell of a job. And my belief, and actually the reason 5 years ago why I wanted my firm to get bought by PwC, is that it's a job that simply will not get happen. It's a rewiring. That will not get happen without some really smart people who understand the metrics of the system, the intricacies of the system, the sheer goddamn plumbing of the system. It will not happen without some really smart cross-sectoral people who know how to make that stuff happen. There's all this talk of externalities, social and environmental externalities. There is no externality. The externality is an endangered species. These externalities are getting internalized back into the system and with a vengeance. And I think there's an extraordinary competence that PwC has already started to get recognized for, which is helping business understand that. And how these megatrends are not things which are just for the future, how they are creating collisions that are already rippling through into values. I just came from an audit pitch, doing a video for an audit pitch for a food company. And this is a food company based in the UK, importing from suppliers in Chile and Spain. Well, guess what? In Spain, they got a water shortage, and they're not going to be able to grow their oranges. They're going to have to relocate. And guess what? In Chile, they're getting frost on the berries. They're getting frost on the berries, and they've no idea how to supply. And guess what? Their big customers, the supermarkets, they've got rapidly shifting expectations because the customers' expectations are shifting of just what they're demanding their supply. So if you work in audit, if you work in assurance, if you work in consulting, if you work in strategy, a differentiator that we've got is to help these companies understand these risks, nail these risks, anatomize them early, and turn them into opportunities. So get back to the cows. if we're the cows, this is our work, okay? This rewiring, for me, to make business work, to make a transition, to help accelerate that transition from a capitalism that had become dysfunctional, and that, to my mind, was failing to fit the world around it, into one where we're actually helping to grow because we are solving the problems that are out there. This, for me, is work that's interesting, and I think it's work that PwC is uniquely equipped to do. And I think to fail to do that work is to fail to help future-proof our clients for what's coming. So for me, this is our work. And your excellence will be your ability to understand what is going on out there, and to translate the immaterial into the material, and to reflect that in the clear, compelling advice that you give to the clients. That's our work. But I want to end with what does this mean for us as people? Because you remember Cow 32. What happened to Cow 32? Cow 32, she died. She totally died. Why did she die? Why did she die? No one was there for Cow 32. Schumacher was counting. There was nobody there for Cow 32. So I want to ask you another question. Another personal question. I have no idea exactly what questions I'm going to ask. But they're basically questions about how we are all doing, and how close we all are to being Cow 32. Because we've got our work, we're producing milk, but are we about to end up in the ditch? Okay? So I want to ask some questions. Shout out, yes, if the answer is yes. Very simple. This. Who here has felt a moment of supreme peace in the last week? Yes. Sorry, yes. Sorry, yes. Actually, raise your hand. It's going to be easier. Yes. And make a noise if you want. Wow, that is a small number. And they were very close to me. I've anesthetized you. Okay. Wow, that's an incredibly small number. Who here has felt a moment of quite high stress in the last week? Which I have also. Who here has just had a pretty Blair week where they felt neither stress nor... Okay, fine. A lot of double counting going on here. Okay, next. Who here has been involved in a piece of work where you thought, yes, okay, this is satisfying? Whoa. And almost none of you are being filmed, by the way. That is a fantastic number. Who here, and we'll of course do this anonymously, just raising your hand in front of everybody. Who here has had a moment where they thought, why on earth am I doing this? Okay, when you felt that moment, why on earth am I doing this? Did anyone intervene? Raise your hand if you intervened. Oh, okay, that's the stunner. Next question. I leave that. I have no conclusion to draw from that. Next question. Who here has felt I am loved in the last week? Oh, that is fantastic. That's very slowly raised hand. You've got beautiful nail polish on. Raise your hand to both your beautiful nail polish. Who here knows for sure that they have unequivocally, without any doubt, unambiguously made someone else know that they are loved in the last week? What the hell? Okay, get up and find someone and say something nice to someone new. Get up, up, obviously, up. Find someone new. Find something nice to say to someone.